a feeling of sort of being brittle. You are working hard and you do things over and over again and it all works, but anything at the moment that comes from a slightly different size feels like it's just broken you down again. And that's mentally, physically and financially nowadays. And I'm certainly not just me, it'll be every CBD restaurant.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are getting out of Melbourne and Victoria. We have been here for a while because there has been so much to talk about. But it feels like the action, and not in a great sense, is shifting north to Sydney. So we are checking in with Stuart Knox from Fix Wine Bar in the city of Sydney. Stuart, how are you going?
Yeah, look, doing okay, all things considered. We've done this before. It's a little moment of deja vu. Just sort of, look, we're trying to get a head around it, really, I suppose, is the reality. Like we've done before, we're just not quite sure what's actually going to happen. It isn't officially a lockdown yet, but it feels awfully close to it.
Does it? Because we know that your Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, hates lockdowns. I mean, I don't think anyone loves them, but she's certainly been inclined to try to manage the outbreaks without locking down the whole city. But I mean, I'm no expert, but I've, been obsessed with coronavirus for about a year and a half, and it does look like there do seem to be obviously more cases every day and some mystery cases and lots of exposure sites. I mean, does this feel different to some of the other outbreaks that Sydney has coped with?
Yeah, absolutely. This one is much more reminiscent of March 2020 than anything else we've seen throughout the time, because it's happening so quickly as opposed to previous ones, and it's so widespread. So we're southwest Sydney, we're the Shire. There's cases in the city and the eastern suburbs. It feels like this one has got a momentum that the other ones haven't.
So as we talk, it's Wednesday, and there were a whole bunch of new restrictions announced today by the Premier of New South Wales. So masks are mandatory indoors. You've gone back to one person per 4 square metres. And there's restrictions on visits to the home. It's all seated service, so there's no standing up at the bar. I mean, that's a big one for you, I guess. But I think also your position there in the city, of course, corporate trade just dies in the arse, right?
Exactly, and that's sort of this one, well, like the other ones, but this one feels even more so because it is so close to home. It's sort of it's a Clayton's lockdown, the lockdown we have without having a lockdown, because the CBD is a red zone hotspot. The general terms and talking from Gladys over these last couple of days has been avoid the city, avoid the eastern suburbs if you can, if possible. And obviously the CBD, the Sydney CBD has got a long way to go anyway. So, yeah, it's been we've lost 95% of our bookings for this week already.
Oh, wow. I'm really sorry to hear that.
We trade at sort of about 50% bookings and 50% walk-in. So, but all of those things, I'm not expecting a lot of walk-ins, funnily enough, with all of this as well.
It just doesn't feel like, what shall we do tonight? I would just stroll around and, have a few fun glasses of wine. It's the vibe's not really there, hey?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So are you staying open tonight, for example?
So tonight, no, we're going to close. It's a combo thing. The bookings we had tonight have all cancelled. So there's nothing on the books, so I'm not turning anyone away there. With the updated exposure sites and timing for the Westfield Bondi Junction, that has actually affected 2 of my staff members as well. So they've rushed off to get COVID tests and have to isolate until they get their negative results. So we've sort of had a double whammy. It would actually only be me and one chef working the restaurant tonight, even if we were open. And I just figure it's not, look, this is like when I did the same thing for the Northern Beaches outbreak. I'd rather err on the side of caution. I always say in hospitality, all publicity is good publicity, but except when you're a COVID outbreak site. It's just those sort of photos in the front page of the news aren't really what I need.
No, that's one of the new maxims dated back to 2020. It's
exactly right.
Definitely not the sort of publicity that you want. Although on the other hand, I think we've all become a little bit used to it, and you sort of do understand that it doesn't mean the business is tainted forever. In a way, we're sort of beyond the Ruby Princess, I think, where it's like, that you can do a deep clean and hopefully, the customers will support those businesses because they're the ones that need it even more. But at the same time, of course, you don't want to have to battle your way through that situation.
And the other side of that as well, from a small business perspective, is that if we have a COVID positive case come through the restaurant, that means all the people working that shift have to isolate for 14 days. Well, that means we're closed for 14 days. We don't have a second team, funnily enough. So that takes out basically every single member of staff, give or take maybe one or two who might be rostered off that day. So it's just when it's this hot and the business is not around, it's just not worth the risk as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, wow. I just really feel for you and for everyone in Sydney dealing with it. It's just really sucks. What are you hearing from your colleagues? Are a lot of people taking that decision to sort of get ahead of possible increases in restrictions and closing, or what are people doing?
Yeah, look, the messages have started to flow through this afternoon. Certainly, I know I'm not the only one that's very much looking at what their bookings are and things like that. Look, we're all in hospitality. We don't want to disappoint our customers. So anyone that's holding bookings, I think, will sort of still hold strong at the moment. But yeah, everyone's on edge, is to say the least. Look, we've seen what Melbourne's gone through so many times. We know how tough it is and all of those things. So we're just there's some very tense people, and there might be some quite hungover people, I think, tomorrow as well for the same reason.
Yeah, you said at the start of this chat that it feels like March 2020. I mean, can you describe that feeling? Like what actually are you feeling?
Yeah, look, there's just a tension, and I've learned very, very quickly, well, not actually that quickly, it's been quite a long time now, that we've just got to take every day as it comes. And 2020 taught me that more than I never really needed to know, frankly. But I had actually thought we had probably just sort of rolled through the worst of it. I'm generally a pretty sort of glass half full person. So I was, even though, look, in March, you're just there going, I don't know what to do. I suppose to a degree, that's what also brings me back to this, is that the Northern Beaches outbreak, or the one that we had in February, March, and then we had a little blip in October, November last year, they were times where we had protections in place with JobKeeper, legislated rent relief, all of those things were there. Whereas March last year and right now, there is absolutely not a cent of protection or any of those things right now. So I'm back to, how am I going to pay the staff next week? How am I going to pay the rent? All those worst case scenarios are bubbling up from the depths of my mind, and that's probably as much why it's feeling like March 2020 as opposed to the other ones.
Yeah, that really makes sense.
I hadn't really thought about it until I said it all out loud, but that does make sense, really, doesn't it?
It's that deep uncertainty, and I mean, it definitely reminds me of the kinds of conversations people were having here. It's almost a month ago now that we went into that lockdown that ended up being 2 weeks. I mean, it's interesting the way that the federal government structured the COVID disaster payment, which was announced towards the end of the first week. So I suppose there is a framework for kind of looking after some people depending on what happens. I mean, obviously, I seriously hope that somehow things turn around and you don't go into lockdown at all. And then, of course, you don't wish a longer lockdown on anyone. But it is a really weird structure of support, that it doesn't kick in straight away. And then it's obviously completely different to JobKeeper in that everyone has to apply for the payment personally. So, yeah, anyway.
I see, and that's it, and it's exactly that. I've obviously, funnily enough, today I sort of did a bit of reading up on that, and I went, well, that's really just a mess, and it's going to be it's no point, because if we get to 2 weeks lockdown and after a week of sort of no business and this sort of, like I said, the Clayton's lockdown that we're in the middle of at the moment, then you do it. It's just more harm than good. By the time we get to it, I don't know. Anyway, it's a very murky crystal ball I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the right rag to polish up that ball at this point.
No, I think we just need to throw it off a building at the moment. But
yeah.
Hey.
Stuart, I remember listening to your chat with my brother podcast, Deep in the Weeds with Anthony Huckstep, like right in the thick of it, like more than a year ago now. I think it was when Sydney was on the verge of reopening. And you talked at that time about the fact that, you know, there were deep issues and problems with the hospitality industry before March 2020, and that perhaps even though the pandemic was very brutal, that it did give the opportunity for a reset and a rethink. In that intervening period, have you been able to do that with your business?
Yeah, partially. We certainly, look, we haven't seen, I think I've had since that conversation maybe 3 tables no show. So that's been a fantastic change, and people's acceptance of having to put a credit card in to make a booking and that whole thing, that has been an absolute win for the industry. There's no...
That's so good.
Yeah. And I've certainly seen that on occasion someone says, well, I'm not comfortable with that. And I said, that's okay. Then you can't book, and you're welcome to come and walk in, and if we've got a space for you, we will find a space for you. But basically, on the whole, that's been fantastic. So that's a huge win. The reopening, we did get people to eat not just at 12:30 and at 6:30. That slipped back into the old ways and means. But that's a bigger sort of structural issue that comes around job hours and everyone working 9 to 5 in the city, and that's a big work in progress with the 24-hour economy and the nighttime commissioner and all of those things as well. But that's a bigger shift to make than I think we'll see necessarily as quickly as I might like. But yeah, the booking thing has been a huge bonus for us.
How has the city of Sydney come back? Because Melbourne, I mean, even prior to the latest lockdown was, you know, there still was a corporate trade was still really, really down. Lunches were really tough. What was Sydney like?
The same thing. So the figures for CBD building occupancy in March was 50%, I think. So we're basically all the buildings were still only half full. For April, I believe it was about 60%. I haven't seen May. Obviously, June's just taken a bath there. But even the New South Wales government handed down its budget yesterday, and part of its budget was saying that their forward estimates is that there's, I can't remember the full stat, it was 70% increase in working from home is their expectation for the CBD economy. So So in all of that, so we've obviously felt that. Look, the thing for us where we are, I'm probably slightly more protected because I'm closer to the courts area, and the courts by their nature are attendance based as opposed to working from home based. So we're probably a little better than those sort of 50 to 60%, but we're certainly feeling it. As much, probably numbers are down at lunch, the spend's probably up, so they almost equal each other out. The night times are actually very quiet. It's funny with that, even though that's our sort of people coming in for a couple of glasses of wine, a small plate, low spend, so you need a certain amount of turnover of seats, and that's probably the biggest hit that we've seen this year.
That's interesting, and I think, you know, one thing that people say in Melbourne, and I'm sure it's the same around the world, it's like when people have to wear masks indoors, they just won't come to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been any of the old models that we had before of you're busy on a Friday and you're quiet on a Monday, and all of those things that we've been here. We'll be 15 years later this year, so I've got a pretty good feel. I had a pretty good feel in this restaurant of, okay, the weather's doing this. This is what's going to happen from that. All of those models have been thrown out the window. But even without any COVID in the community, it's raining. Yep, no, we're going to be quiet today because people will go, oh, this is a good day, work from home day. It's a really warm, sunny winter's day. It's going to be quiet again because it sounds also like a good work from home day. So and all of those things bounce around. But as soon as masks get made mandatory on public transport, or particularly now this extra one, masked inside, which includes in your office, yeah, say goodbye. The city's closed.
I just can't quite conceive of the energy that it must take to dismantle the expectations that you've built up over 15 years of trade and just, wipe the slate clean and rethink everything. It's so much. Yeah, look, one thing about this place is that Fix has probably survived for 15 years by the fact that I quite often, well, not quite as often as I have recently, but I did seem to every 5 years, right, wipe the slate clean. We're going off in a different direction to a degree. But yeah, look, the roller coaster and the moving from the moving of the goalposts has been a certain level of stress and sort of it just grinds you down. I was talking to someone the other day. I might have posted about it socially or somewhere. A feeling of sort of being brittle. You are working hard and you do things over and over again and it all works, but anything at the moment that comes from a slightly different size feels like it's just broken you down again. Yeah, the reserves aren't there. Yeah, exactly. And that's mentally, physically and financially nowadays. And I'm certainly not just me. That'll be every CBD restaurant. And look, the other side of all of this is that all of those suburban restaurants that are in those areas where everyone is going to be now working from home pretty much for the next 2 or 3 weeks and no one's going on school holidays are going to have the best probably July school holidays they've ever had. So it's not all doom and gloom. Obviously, if we get locked down, those guys will be affected negatively. But at the moment, they'll actually be they've got a little boon coming for them. Yeah, well, I guess you've got to be glad for the people that it works for. Well, look, it's one of those things that I'd rather people still be out spending money in restaurants one way, shape or form than not at all. But yeah, look, it's swings and roundabouts on that one. That's true. So there was a piece of good news that was announced yesterday for the hospitality industry, and that is that chefs were added to the priority migration skilled occupation list. So I know that, there were various industry groups, AHA and the Restaurant and Catering Association were arguing really hard for chefs and also for restaurant managers to be added to that priority migration list. They didn't get restaurant managers over the line, which is unfortunate, but chefs were added, which I think is... Oh, that's huge. That's huge. Look, I know of too many restaurants that aren't trading even in the hours that they would like to because they can't find the staff, and that's really brutal. And they're the suburban ones that are going, we've got business there, we can't take it because we don't have the staffing for it. That to me would be more frustrating than anything at all. Well, you just don't want to hear it, do you? Because, that's hampering recovery and those kinds of, trading restrictions that are not of your own. Well, those trading restrictions that you just can't do anything about that. You just think, well, that's going to filter through to the whole economy, really, when you can't employ people, they're not spending money, they're not generating, and so it goes around. Exactly. Yeah, it's just a downward spiral. Yeah. So, would you be in your business? Would you be looking to sponsor a chef, or would it just be that you'd be looking to ease that situation throughout the industry, and that'll sort of shake down and help people in all kinds of businesses? Yeah. Look, I'm in a very unique and fortunate position that most of my staff are full time and have been with me for 5+ years. So I kept everyone on through JobKeeper and all of that. So I haven't had any loss of staff, and I'm
tightly staffed. I actually need another floor staff member, not the kitchen. But I'm actually, having said that, I'm in the process of sponsoring one of my chefs as we speak. But he's already here, and so he's applying for a residency visa or something like that. But whatever the case may be, whilst I personally don't need one of those chefs, that just changes the whole market because it takes the pressure off everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess the fact that they're added to the list doesn't mean that, they didn't mention
they still have to be able to get in.
Well, exactly. They didn't announce at the same time a special quarantine hotel for chefs. So I'm not sure exactly.
We're not quite there yet.
That's it. But I think it is definitely a recognition by government that it is that there is just incredible tightness in that jobs market, and that the industry can't recover without more people to work in it. And as we all know, you can't just you can't find those people straight out of cooking school, or they're not just waiting at the bus stop waiting to come and fix your restaurant for you.
Yes, I've been scanning the bus stops, but no, not found anyone there at all.
Well, Stuart, let's talk about some fun stuff. So given that you might need to have a drink tonight, what wine is floating your boat at the moment?
Look, this is always a dangerous question. Anything that's wet is always the first answer. Well, I also write for The Real Review, which is Hugh and Huck's online website. So I do a bit of reviewing for them, which I started, funnily enough, in February 2020. So that's kept me occupied, and I do sort of 8 to 10 dozen wines per month. So actually at home I've got quite a selection of bits and pieces which I've opened. Normally I give them to the neighbours, and actually I had a moment on Sunday when I was tasting those, and then I've got another box to do. I thought, I'm just going to hold a couple of those back. I just think I'm going to need a glass of wine this week. So, I think I've made a right call there. But actually tonight, I think I'm going to go and grab a nice bottle of pinot off the shelf and just sit back and relax and enjoy that. Have a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Well, I hope your neighbours are okay.
That's all right. I know that next week I've got to go and collect a few more boxes, so that's all right. They will live.
They won't go thirsty.
They'll find a way through it.
Great. Well, Stuart, I really wish you guys all the best. I hope that, things turn around for Sydney and everything can be open, masks can come off, density can increase, and, things can snap back closer to normal. It's just a bloody roller coaster, this whole pandemic situation.
Yes, it certainly is. And look, I know whatever happens we'll get on top of it one way, shape or form. We might have a week of being locked down, or 2 weeks, or we might not. But I know, like everything, it'll pass. And there will be one, I'm sure, much like Melbourne, I know on the other side what Sydney does is it goes quiet during those, and then it comes out pretty hard and fast straight after it. So I'm sure there's a rush on the other side of this one. Once again, I don't know whether it seems to be a particularly Sydney thing. These things always happen just before a school holiday or a long weekend. So there'll be a lot of people that won't be going away, but I'm sure they'll all be keen for a glass of wine on the other side of it.
I'm sure you're right. All right. Well, take care and all the best. Thanks so much for chatting to Dirty Linen today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the chat, Dani. It was good to have a chat.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta @Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This